Welcome back, good brothers. It's Pipecast number 7.
Lucky number 7.
Yeah, here with Harry and
Dion.
And tonight we're going to look at some quotes about the pipe. Some famous and some lesser known. And we thought we'd discuss them, see if they ring true for us, see what we can add to the whole conversation.
Like sort of mini conversation starters.
Exactly, yeah. So we're going to kick it off with a banger, and we're going to go with the classic.
So before you do, bro, what are you smoking?
Good point. Things first.
What pipe have you got?
I've got the old Savinelli Sistina, which I got for a great price, actually. I got this for 45 quid. I've seen it online.
That's a Barry bargain.
Yeah, it's a Savinelli. Savinelli for 45 quid is good
crazy,
anyway.
Yeah.
But I've seen this pipe and pipes in this line for 70, 80, 90 quid since.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why I got it for so cheap, but... And I'm smoking Gareth Hogarth's Best Brown. Nice burley blend.
All right.
Yeah, it's probably is my all-time favourite. I keep coming back to it. So yeah, that's what I felt like tonight. What about you?
Yeah, so I've got the I've gone for the church one. So this is the Vulcan Coreway. So again, this is pretty much their bog standard, cheap and cheerful pipes. And this was probably about in the sort of 48, 50 quid mark. But it's good. It's a good pipe for the money.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing fancy about it, but it's a bit of a workhorse. But it's just nice. It's nice and cool down the stem. You can fit a little filter as well.
Okay.
The balsa up paper filter. And in there we've got some Gareth Hogarth rum apple twist. The last remnants of lovely blend, very different to the stuff that I typically smoke. Bit of a cigar wrapper kind of overtone.
It is. It's got like New World cigar kind of notes.
Right.
I have to be in the mood for the twist.
Yeah.
And occasionally I am. I've got a bit of rum, brown rum at home, but yeah. So let's kick it off with a banger. Every morning I wake up and think, good, another 24 hours pipe smoking. Classic. Who said that?
It can only be J.R.R. Super Tolkien.
J.R.R. the GOAT. What's great is that he doesn't sleep. He smokes. He just smokes for 24 hours straight.
Yeah, that's a man after my own heart.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to add to that.
Well,
that's why I wanted to kick off with it. That's a banger.
And just maybe one thing to note is that every single picture that I have ever seen of him, he's got his pipe surgically attached to his gob and a bowl full of probably capstan.
And his loved one said that, like, we've mentioned it in the Tolkien one, but a lot of the time people couldn't understand what he was saying because his gob was full of vulcanite. And when he'd finished one, he was packing the next one.
What a lad.
So, let's move on. You kick it off, bro. Pick one of yours.
Yeah, okay, so I thought this was quite a neat one as well. It kind of hits on two fronts for me, but here we go. So, as the priest is characterised by his cassock, so the smoker by his pipe. The way in which he holds it, raises it to his lips, knocks out the ashes, reveals his personality, habits, passions, and even his thoughts. Which is E.T.A. Hoffman. He was an author of fairy tales, and I think he wrote the story behind the Nutcracker.
All right.
Yeah. Interesting for me, this one, because obviously, you know, with the orthodoxy and the cassock and the pipe, I think that's a really interesting one. That hits on both fronts for me. I think now maybe in this day and age, just having a pipe is an idiosyncrasy.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure.
You know, not like we mentioned it last time. You know, vapes, cigs, cigars, even maybe to some extent, but they're not quite as much, I don't think. You know, you see someone with a cigar, it's like it's different, but definitely with a pipe, you know, getting the wood out, right? Yeah. It's different, and certainly the way that you hold it. You know, I've seen it. I think it was Mutton Chop Piper, good channel by the way. Shout out to Mutton Chop, where he was getting some stick for not clenching in the right side of his mouth. It was on the left side of his mouth.
What?
Yeah. So I think people can be quite guarded about the way they do this, but this is the thing that I love about pipe smoking, is that it's your hobby. It's, you know, you do things your way.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great shout.
Yeah, like you said, man. If owning a pipe is idiosyncratic, each pipe smoker has their own idiosyncrasies. And what I like about that quote is that, you know, it's drawing the parallel between the priest and the pipe smoker. So as if the pipes, because obviously the priest leads the liturgy, he directs us through the ritual. And we've spoken many times before about how pipe smoking is its own ritual. So it's almost like, you know, you're leading your own ritual.
Right.
He talks about knocking out the ashes, how you knock out the ashes, how you tam.
Yeah.
Which side you clench on, as if that particularly matters more. But yeah, so it's like its own little ritual, and you're the one leading it through there.
Yeah, that was quite an interesting one. So yeah, I'll let you take another one.
Let's go.
We couldn't afford 2 books.
So I'm going to go with: there is nothing like being left alone again, to walk peacefully with oneself, to boil one's coffee and fill one's pipe, and to think idly and slowly as one does it. Magic. And that's
great.
And that's Knut Hamsun, a Norwegian writer. Yeah, I mean, that speaks to me, and I'm sure it does to you.
Yeah.
We like to spend a lot of time in nature. We have done so together and alone as well.
Yeah.
And this quote is particularly talking about, like, the solitary act of pipe smoking, and it speaks to me because I've got like a nice little woodland 5 minutes from my place, and I've spent a lot of time just walking through those woods with the pipe.
Yeah.
Not listening to music, not listening to podcasts or anything, but like he says, just kind of like thinking idly and slowly. And something I mentioned before as well is that I think the effects of the nicotine itself, they do something to the thought process, and it's not a mistake why, you know, thinkers and writers do smoke a pipe, or smoke in general, because it does do something to the thought process where everything slows down.
Orders it, slows it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I just think that if I'm when I smoke alone, it is as if my mind was like, you know, disturbed water.
Yeah.
It becomes much more serene and still water, and then you can see what's in the water when it's still. And
right.
So, and you know, he likes his coffee with his pipe too, which is a huge one.
Man. There is nothing quite like. So when we were out last, it'd be pretty much, I think, this time last year coming up for. I think it was just after Pascha, and we went out and did some wild camping near us, and that first brew in the morning. It's just amazing. You know,
amazing.
You're getting up, it's fresh. You can hear the birds out and about. We had a peregrine falcon that was flying around. You know, and the first things first is gather the wood that we'd split and batten the night before. Get a brew on. Get your coffee.
Get the breakfast.
Get the breakfast on. Get a pipe out and enjoy. And you know, we just spent to be honest, I was going to say a good half an hour. I don't know how long we spent. Time just disappeared. You're not focusing on time. Everything slows down. It could have been 5 minutes. It could have been 2 hours. I don't know. But you are completely focused on what you are doing, and what you're doing is simple. It's a simple task. You know, getting the fire on, getting your coffee on, getting your pipe on. But when you're completely free from distraction and just spending time out in the outdoors, the rest of those sort of little distractions and foibles of the world just completely disappear. There's nothing like it.
Exactly, man. And just to go on a little bit of a tangent, I've noticed recently, and this is related, when I'm in the gym and I use my phone to track my lifts and everything. So, you know, I've done this lift and I've lifted this much for this amount of sets and reps. And by the end of the time I'm in the gym, I spent so much time on the phone, and my mind is just a mess.
Yeah.
Because I'm on and off the phone, my mind is a mess. When you go camping, all that's removed. Usually, if you're wild camping, usually you're in places where there's no signal anyway.
Yeah.
So the incentive to even look at your phone is removed completely. Especially if you're with a good friend. It's all about the conversation. It's all about the lower sea communion.
Yeah.
Eating together, cooking together, drinking and smoking together.
Absolutely. And the hierarchy of things as well. It's like there's obviously with the church there's hierarchy, and with ordered states and empires in times gone by, everything was kind of pyramidal. There was a point to it, and everything looked upwards. It's the same with when you're out and about outside. Your first is shelter. Your next is water. You've got a survival pyramid. Okay, we're not kind of out there, doing survivalist stuff. Yeah. Props to guys that do.
Absolutely.
Amazing. But even just on a basic level, you've got to find some water. If you're going completely wild camping, you're going to go and find your own water. You've got to purify it. You've got to make sure it's fit to drink.
Yeah.
Which means you've got to get some wood. You've got to make your shelter up. So these things become not just a folly. It's a necessity, right? So you're completely focused on the tasks in hand.
Yeah. So I like that one. Yeah, you're up, bro.
Yeah. Great author. Women thrive on novelty and are easy meat for the commerce of fashion. Men prefer old pipes and torn jackets. Author and linguist, like Tolkien, Anthony Burgess.
Right. That is a great quote, and it rings true for me, certainly. I mean, I'm still wearing stuff that's like falling off me, right? Yeah. It's true.
I know.
It's true.
I used to be so hung up about it. Yeah. Like, I've got a hole in my jumper, chuck it.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, unless it's rotting off my body now, I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Most of my clothes are my dad's old cast-offs. I wear my dad's old clothes.
Yeah.
And I don't care, frankly. Frankly, I don't care. I really don't put a lot of stock in clothes, to be honest. I like my clothes to be clean and like fit me and everything, but really, I don't care. For me, it's about those simple pleasures and those comforts, yeah.
And the fast fashion thing, I think. So picking apart what Anthony Burgess is saying there, anyway. Like the half of it, being the like old pipes, torn jackets. So for pipes, just kind of coming back to this bit firstly, that with pipes, they get better as they get older. They smoke better. You cake them.
Yeah.
Unless they've been absolutely hammered, and they're full of clag.
But even then, they're
good. Right. You see guys who do an amazing job at restoring them. But the principle behind it that a pipe smokes better as it gets older. The wood itself changes by the handling and the smoking. The jackets feel more comfortable and less sort of restrictive as they kind of get as they fit to your body.
And kind of like worn in the right places.
True, exactly. And then you sort of flip that round and look at sort of it says the commerce of fashion, so like industry, like the fashion industry, the rag trade, right? And with that, especially now, we're kind of in the fast fashion era. So it's like there's chicks who like buy a dress, wear it once, and then just either get rid of it, sell it. Like it's gone. Like that was for a night out. It's wrapped up with an event, and then it's just disposed of. And it comes back a little bit to what we mentioned last time on like the disposability of culture.
Yeah.
That things are, in the Shire, things are made to endure, right? That's the sort of the guiding principle, I think, of what I love about pipe smoking, is that these things are made to outlast us. Right?
Absolutely.
It's the difference between a Bic razor and a TAZ Sard straight razor.
Yeah, the same way that like good tobacco in a sealed jar, a year, 5 years, 10 years later, will only mellow and improve.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's go with another well-known one. Probably not pronouncing this correctly. Trishman's paradox or Triskman's paradox. This is a well-known one. A pipe gives a wise man time to think, and a fool something to stick in his mouth. I think that's a great quote.
Yeah.
What I love about that is like the pipe as the equalizer. The pipe brings the same outcome to the wise man and the fool. So it kind of elevates the fool and it humbles the wise man to bring them to kind of like the same level because the wise man he's thinking about what you ought to say, choosing his words carefully, and it's the same with the fool. He's got something stuck in his mouth and look as if he's thinking as if he's a wise man. And there's always we've seen intellectual figures and thinkers with the pipe in their mouth, looking kind of wistful and pensive and thoughtful, and that. I think the image of the pipe is inseparable from deep thought and contemplation. And so that's a good one. I like that one.
It is good, and it kind of that idea of sort of a meeting point between two extremes, right? A complete idiot on one side and a philosophical genius on the other. I look at guys, especially in the 50s and 60s. We've got characters like Harold Wilson, Tony Benn, who were all extremely left wing. Tony Benn being extremely left wing. Right. He was our local MP for quite a while here. You've got kind of Harold Wilson, who was also kind of quite left wing. But then you see other guys who were completely on the opposite end of the political spectrum, and they were pipe smokers too. And you kind of see all these old guys, all the old RAF guys, all the old hammy actors, all smoking pipes. And I think it was a nice leveler. That there was some commonality between people. That at the very least, if everybody shut up about politics and stuck the pipe in the mouth and enjoyed the baccy, it was like a common denominator between people. I thought that was quite a cool way of looking at it.
That's a great point. I think it is. It does fit in with that quote. It reminds me of a quote by one of the saints, and I believe it was Saint Anthony the Great, although don't quote me on that, who said, "I've often regretted having spoken, but almost never having kept my mouth closed." So what better way to keep your mouth closed than to stick pipe in there?
Absolutely right. By monastic charter.
Yeah, it's got the
seal of approval.
Aesthetic approval. Yeah. So right, man.
Okay,
you hit one up.
Now, I was quite surprised at who said this, but here we go anyway. Okay, so a pipe in the mouth makes it clear that there has been no mistake. You are undoubtedly a man.
Yeah, that's a good one. Who was that, man?
A.A. Milne.
A.A. Milne, yeah.
I didn't think of that as Christopher. What should we do today, Christopher Robin? Let's go pack a bowl.
Yeah, smoke up. Yeah.
Let's go blaze some flake.
Yeah, just walking through the 100-acre wood.
Oh man, so good.
With the briar going. Yeah.
Maybe that's where he got his inspiration from.
Probably, right? Yeah. Probably spent a lot of time
out in the woods
smoking.
Oh,
yeah.
I
don't know much about Milne, to be honest. Well, that's a great quote. That's a banger. Yeah.
Good Anglo guy. Just to say that we don't very often see chicks with pipes.
No, you don't. It's not a common thing. You do see, I've seen pictures of, the Japanese pipe. It's called a kisaru. It's like a long metal pipe. It's got a tiny bowl. They smoke shag in it.
Yeah.
It's a tiny bowl, but they smoke very fine shag, and it's supposed to be like a quick.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like that kind of slender pipe. It kind of has a feminine quality to it,
like the Audrey Hepburn cigarette holder, breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah. But the old briar, the old gnarled briar, it's
an extension of the man's hand. Okay,
that's a good one. I think it's time. I'm gonna bust out the old.
Yeah.
And this is a longer one, although not too long, but I'm going to read from Moby Dick, which is one of my favourite novels.
Classic.
A classic. And chapter 30, it's a short chapter, it's just one page, and it's titled The Pipe. Chapter 30, The Pipe. So, I'm assuming everyone is at least kind of familiar with the story. So, the whole story involves this main character, Ishmael, is the narrator. He is on a quest to a whaling expedition to take down one particular whale, Moby Dick, who Captain Ahab, the captain of the ship, the Pequod, has a personal vendetta against.
Right.
So, chapter 30, The Pipe. When Stubb had departed, Ahab, Captain Ahab, stood for a while leaning over the bulwarks, and then, as had been usual with him of late, calling a sailor of the watch, he sent him below for his ivory stool and also his pipe. Lighting the pipe at the binnacle lamp and planting the stool on the weather side of the deck, he sat and smoked. In Old Norse times, the thrones of the sea-loving Danish kings were fabricated, saith tradition, of the tusks of the narwhal. How could one look at Ahab then, seated on that tripod of bones, without bethinking him of the royalty it symbolized? For a Khan of the plank, and a king of the sea, and a great lord of Leviathans was Ahab. Some moments passed, during which the thick vapour came from his mouth in quick and constant puffs, which blew back again into his face. How now, he soliloquized, at last, withdrawing the tube. This smoking no longer soothes. Oh, my pipe! Hard must it go with me if thy charm be gone. Here have I been unconsciously toiling, not pleasuring, aye, and ignorantly smoking to windward all the while, to windward, and with such nervous whiffs, as if, like the dying whale, my final jets were the strongest and fullest of trouble. What business have I with this pipe, this thing that is meant for sereneness, to send up mild white vapours among mild white hairs, not among torn iron-grey locks like mine? I'll smoke no more. He tossed the still-lighted pipe into the sea. The fire hissed in the waves. The same instant the ship shot by the bubble the sinking pipe made. With slouched hat, Ahab lurchingly paced the planks.
That's a great chapter.
That's a great chapter, yeah.
I got two things from that. I got, first of all, he was talking about Danish, the Norse kings, the Danes. I'm a lover at the moment. I'm going all over the peats and tobacco, which is, unless I'm wrong, Danish.
Oh yeah, it's made in Denmark.
And in fact, I've had some peats and I've had some Nordin today. And that kind of tradition, that's for especially sort of for Anglos, that's kind of where we came from, right? The angle,
exactly.
the angle in Denmark. So that sort of speaks to that sort of Danish tradition of pipe smoking, but also something that I picked up on a little bit on the last Pipecast and maybe the couple before, about how it's not a quick process.
Yeah.
It's not a quick. If you're looking to smash a bowl out in 5 minutes, you're not going to enjoy it. On the Falcon leaflet that comes with the pipe, it says if it's getting hot, you're smoking too fast. If you're smoking too fast, you're not enjoying it. So slow down, slow everything down. That he's not enjoying it. He's not smoking. His cadence is all wrong.
Absolutely.
He's and it's that disturbs him. It's not necessarily that just that he's smoking too fast, which is why he's upset. It's like this thing's not working right, and he just lobs it into the sea. It's a bellwether for him. It's an indicator that something's not right. He's not calm. He's not serene, and throws it into the sea. The chaos, right, into the chaotic realm.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I absolutely agree. So the chapter, it draws comparison between Ahab and kingship. It's comparing to the Danish kings. Yeah. So here he is. He's lord of his domain,
like sailor kings.
Right. Exactly. He's lord of his domain. He calls for his stool and his pipe.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's puffing on it hard.
Yeah.
Probably got tongue bite.
It's enough to make anybody chuck into the sea, that isn't it?
And it occurs to him in a moment of self-awareness, because the whole thing about the character of Ahab,
like an epiphany.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole thing about the character of Ahab is that he is completely single-minded to the point of madness on killing this whale.
Right.
And so, in a moment of self-awareness, he realizes that he is abusing the pipe, mistreating the pipe.
Yeah.
He's not paying it the attention,
respect
and reverence that it deserves, and he calls back to a time when it did bring sereneness, as he says to him. He says it's like a tool for serenity.
Yeah.
And even though he's lord of his domain, he cannot enjoy his pipe.
Yeah. And
so, like you said, he throws it into the chaos, back into the chaos.
Yeah.
Because a pipe, in a way, is like a symbol of order. And I tried to say this in the first podcast, but it didn't really come out right. But, it's been crafted by hand.
Yeah.
And it controls a flame. Flame is like another symbol of chaos, because it's wild and it spreads where it will and it destroys.
But it creates as well.
But it can create as well. Yeah. And in the way that it's ordered within this bowl, it's quite a symbol of order.
Yeah. It's contained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he casts that into the sea, and as if to symbolise like the the dissolution of the last bits of his own,
ordered mind.
Because now it's single-minded on this whale. This Leviathan, as it's called, which we know in the
Psalm 103.
Exactly, from the Psalms. It's a chaos monster that God actually slays in the beginning of time, according to the psalmist. So it's like a reversal of that story. Because God is the ordering principle who slays the sea monster dragon, bringing order to the world. He's done the opposite. So that really spoke to me. He cannot enjoy the pipe, and we often talk about how the pipe brings calmness and serenity, which I absolutely think is true. But what this quote also suggests is that it's a calm and serene soul that goes to the pipe. Because he's gone to the pipe, and this pipe hasn't brought him the calmness and serenity that it used to. Because in his own soul, he's not calm and still. So he throws away the pipe.
And so I'm going to. That reminds me of the poem that we were talking about just before we did the Pipecast, the Charles Bukowski and the Genius of the Crowd, when it says, "Those who preach God need God." It's like those who preach and talk about the pipe need the pipe. It
reminds me of Father Seraphim Rose of blessed memory. I think he was talking about Nietzsche, and he was saying how it may not have been Nietzsche. I don't want to misquote a Holy Father, but he was talking about how these people who were so vocally opposed to the faith, they're actually the ones who are calling out for it. Because if they're not bothered, why talk about it? Exactly.
Just don't talk
it would be a non-issue. So
that's a great quote.
That's a good one. Yeah, man. Let's move on.
Okay, let's see if I can get anywhere near that. So the pipe draws wisdom from the lips of the philosopher, shuts up the mouth of the foolish. It generates a style of conversation, contemplative, thoughtful, benevolent, and unaffected. Thackeray, William Makepeace Thackeray. So it spoke to me a little bit about one of the quotes that, or one of the podcasts, I should say, from the Pipe Cottage.
Okay.
Great guy. A great channel. If you get a chance to have a look, he's a professor. He's an academic, isn't he? And he kind of speaks a little bit sort of philosophically about things, but he's
a smart dude.
He's a very, very clued up guy.
It is certainly a channel of high quality.
The highest quality. He's an absolute lad. He's really, really
amazing
good.
Accent. Incredible
so
accent.
Good. And you're kind of drawn into his cadence and his tone and his sort of laid back, the world that he speaks about when he talks about things. And one of the things that he's really, really hot on one of his episodes was that it's good to read stuff before he meets up with his. This is what he reads stuff before he meets up with his other fellow pipers, so that when they're together, they've got stuff to talk about, which is not stuff that they've seen on the news or the current thing, right? I stand for the current thing. That it's beyond that. And I think that Thackeray's talking about there in terms of contemplative and thoughtful conversation. I haven't yet found anything better than a pipe session to really get deep and meaningful about things.
Absolutely.
Provided we've not drunk a bottle of Old
Foresters. Man.
So this is all good. Don't get me wrong. This is good. But get your conversation in first.
Just to go on a tangent.
Before you lose motor function.
That last Pipecast we did, if you watched it, you'll see there's a bottle of Old Forester in the centre of the table, and we started it before the end of the podcast.
That took a tanking.
And there was not much left in that bottle by the end of the Pipecast.
So I'm on port tonight instead.
I think that is great, and I do like to read with a pipe. I've tried to read with a cigar, and it's not the same, because you kind of you've got it there. You can't hold a cigar in your mouth because it's like a little smoke in your eyeball. You can't hold it there, and it's but you can clench your pipe in your mouth, and you can pour over a book. And I keep my mother's old Bible in the garage that she's had since she was a kid. So I can look over scripture But I also read a lot of fiction. Probably a lot more than I ought to. But I've been reading a bit of Cormac McCarthy lately. I've been reading.
Good writer.
Yeah, great writer. There's a lot of pipe references in Blood Meridian, actually. Pipe and tobacco references, yeah. I've been reading Dune lately, actually. Frank Herbert,
yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm sure this is like lowbrow stuff compared to what the gentleman from Pipe Cottage is reading.
Yeah. But it's the best. It's still a level above what I talk about, which is good.
Right.
Okay.
So,
hit me up.
Yeah, this is another well-known one. I'm sure most pipe smokers know this, particularly if you are a Christian pipe smoker. You've probably got a t-shirt and a mug with it on.
Yeah.
In Catholicism, the pint, the pipe, and the cross can all fit together. And that is your boy, G.K. Chesterton.
Very well quoted in Orthodoxy, very well quoted in most denominations as well, I think it is, but he's a solid guy.
And like I was saying earlier, he's spoken of in the same breath as Tolkien and Lewis. Deep thinker.
Yeah.
And
he did a lot of camping as well, I think.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. What I like about this quote is that it speaks to the inherent goodness of creation.
Yeah.
So we're Orthodox Christians. I'm sure there's some Catholics listening, some Protestants. We affirm the goodness of creation, as it says in Genesis. God creates, and He sees that it is good.
It was good.
Yeah. We don't go for this belief that the material world, materiality is inherently evil. That's Gnosticism, Manichaeanism. It was called out as heresy.
Yeah.
So, in Catholicism, and I'm going to extend that to us as in Orthodoxy, in Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, both uppercase O and lowercase o, there's room for these to enjoy these material pleasures.
Yeah.
The cross is obviously the highest. That's the point of that's the peak of the valley. But it speaks to, I think it implies hierarchy. It speaks to hierarchy.
Yeah.
We can enjoy these material pleasures.
Yeah.
We're not Cromwellites. We're not Puritans. There's nothing wrong with enjoying these pleasures.
Right.
And they fit in with our worldview as Christians. They fit in with our...
the man was given dominion over things.
Exactly.
You know, to bring them to heel, to bring order. Which is why you mentioned about the pipe being something that brings order to a chaotic process. You know, you're lighting something, but what are you lighting? You're lighting with something that was made by hands,
exactly,
that God had made, and lighting a leaf that God has grown, and
exactly,
and the wood itself is briar, that God had made.
Yeah,
even with the plastic, it's hydrocarbon, but it's come from millennia of fossils, decaying plant matter. It's stuff that's grown. It's still something that's grown. Even these mean things, the mean things of the world can be sort of put together, brought to heel, and enjoyed in the right components. And just coming back a little bit to Tolkien, and I wonder if this is kind of where he was going with this, himself being a staunch Catholic, was that when he describes himself as being pretty much like just a big hobbit, right? I love that quote, and I'd actually got that quote pegged for tonight, but Harry's was better already. But talking about the hobbits, when Bilbo's talking, he says, "Oh, we pride ourselves on the growing of pipe, the growing of tobacco, the smoking of pipe weed, and the brewing of ales. The simple things in life, but they sort of centered their culture and their community around that. And the pub, in the middle of it all, the Green Dragon in the middle of it all being like the cornerstone, if you like, the linchpin of the community."
And you used the word twice there, and I'm glad you did, because it's something that I want to talk about. You said community, which is communion.
Right.
Obviously, as apostolic Christians, we celebrate the Eucharist. We take part in Holy Communion.
Right.
communion is what joins us together. We share this meal, the mystical supper. But we also see in our life lower C communion, which I've already mentioned earlier. A good meal with family.
Yeah.
That's communion.
Yeah.
Going down to the Green Dragon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Proverbially speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
To enjoy a pint.
Yeah.
That's communion. And the form of communion that for us, particularly you and me personally, that brings us together a lot is the pipe.
Pipe.
And that's a form of I'm being careful to say lower C communion. I'm not equating pipe smoking with the Holy Eucharist.
No, absolutely not.
But it's a form of what brings us together.
That's right. Yeah, like the community aspect to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's a really nice quote, and it gets mentioned a lot, and I think for a good reason, because it does speak to something really true and pure and good.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, very much.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to finish us up on a short one, but I think if we're talking about poignant quotes, it doesn't really get much more on the nose for me than this one. On land, on sea, at home, abroad, I smoke my pipe and worship God. Johann Sebastian Bach.
Amen to that. Yeah. Succinct.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
It's almost like a biblical verse. It's succinct.
But
it's short and concise, but it carries in it a lot of meaning.
Right.
And it's a banger, bro.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of calls to mind the thing I told you about the other night. It was from a book called Prayers by the Lake, written by St. Nikolai Velimirovich of Serbia, who I understand was a smoker himself. And somebody, there was a quote from the book, somebody asked a monk, Holy Father, is it okay to, let me get the order right, Holy Father, is it okay to pray while I smoke? He said no.
Yeah.
So is it okay to smoke as I pray? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Like subtle difference, but meaningful.
But all the difference.
Yeah. So yeah.
And Bach as well, he kind of came from a time where, Germany was steeped in, still probably the Holy Roman Empire.
Right.
I think, unless I've got my history really badly wrong. It's not my period of history, but...
Hey, Tone, how... It's neither holy nor Roman. Sorry, Catalan bros.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
But we also love Sopranos. But that era, you look at like Western art music, like the classical music, and the classical era, and the culture that had sprung from Europe at that time, and that it was in the architecture and in the music, that it was all kind of God-centric still. It was very focused on looking upwards, the kind of Gothic architecture. It draws your eye upwards.
Right.
The music we were talking about, that it was big on church organ music, and we're talking about the church organ being an instrument which again draws the eye upwards when you look at it. The pipes, they've got a hierarchy.
Yeah. They're ordered.
And that it uses wind to generate the standing waves within the pipe, and it's that causes it's the movement of air. Effectively, it's an acoustic thing, which is like prayer. And actually, when you look at right at the very first bit of Genesis, God spoke these things into existence. So obviously, God speaks in a different way that we speak, because there wasn't any air when God spoke these things into existence. He made it,
right?
But it's something that comes forth out of the mouth, and the compression and rarefaction of these waves creates something, and we pick it up, we hear it. It does something to our psyche, to our mind, when we process it. But effectively, it's something that is made, that starts with speech, and that Bach was sort of steeped in this tradition, that everything was kind of pointing upwards.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I thought to myself a lot like a pipe too. I mean, like kind of like smoke issues forth and it rises, and if you're Orthodox, and maybe if you're Catholic too, we're used to incense, and like back in the Old Testament times, it would have been burnt offerings on the altar.
Yeah,
the
and frankincense as well.
Frankincense, right? It rises up towards the heavens. God receives the smoke. He sees the sacrifices.
Yeah, let my prayer arise like incense before thee.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's something about the smoke rising. Into the ether. Yeah. That actually reminds me of like we were talking about the other day, Spengler talking about the Western man as Faustian man, this kind of desire to like just kind of expand and disappear into the ether. That's why we as English, particularly the Englishmen, we just went everywhere, bro. We have to climb mountains. We have to just like extend into the mountains. We have to like trek through the North Pole and the jungles, and we have to like go to the frontier in America.
Frontiers,
Gregorian chant that kind of like, and the way that Gothic cathedrals, like you mentioned earlier, like expand into the sky, and the way that Gregorian chant expands into the spire and like, dissipates. So a lot like pipe smoke.
A lot like pipe smoke.
Yeah.
A good one to finish on, I think.
I think that's that was good. I thought we
covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, I thought that was good. Yeah.
Nice. So thanks for joining us. Please leave some comments. Let us know your thoughts. It'd be good to hear how you guys interpreted some of those quotes as well. Yeah. And drop some quotes in of your own.
Yeah, drop some quotes.
Because inevitably, I mean, what we could just jot down and scribble down on a notebook in a bit of time. It's just enough to kind of fill this Pipecast. But I'm sure that you guys have got some really cutting stuff as well that we can discuss in the comments. And if you've got any other ideas, anything you want us to try, anything you want us to review, hit us up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let us know. And just again, thanks for the support. We're closing in on 400 subs now, which is great. Yeah, more than
kind of crazy.
Yeah, more than I thought we'd pull in. But and just the like the support in the comments has been really like humbling and moving. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope you enjoyed it. God bless.
God bless.